I want to tell you how I went from never doing a deal to doing 2.6 million. I started off in 3 states and all my deals were virtual. I didn't want to go out to these houses. So everything I did was virtually over a phone. When I started, 5 cold callers, 3 different states. I'd never bought data my first 12 months that was over 350,000 ARV. I kept my ARVs at 350,000 and under. I did absentee owner and owner occupied data. That was the data I ran for my first 12 months. I did 30 to 100% equity. I excluded LLC and trustee owned properties. I made sure they owned the property for 10 plus years and the age of the home was 15 years or older. That's the only data I pulled my first 12 months. Sometimes it's a little overwhelming to understand the entire business model because a lot of you are worried about finding a buyer for a deal you don't even have. So you're worried about 1 or 2 problems ahead of the problem you have in front of you. And for most people, their problem is they're not making the amount of dials or getting the amount of talk time or making the amount of offers that it takes to accumulate a deal. These were the non-negotiable KPIs that I was hitting every single day. And what I want you to do is compare what you're doing to what I was doing. The non-negotiable KPIs I was hitting on a daily basis to get to over $100,000 a month. Remember, my leads were coming from a cold call company. I wasn't personally cold calling. So I had 5 cold callers. I was outbound dialing a minimum of 60 numbers a day, minimum. And you want to write this down. Like I'm giving you the play to make some serious money in this industry because I know a lot of you right now are struggling, I'm sure. So I did 60 outbound dials a day. Now, Eric, what's an outbound dial? It's where I would pick the phone up, I would dial their number, and I'd let it ring a minimum of 3 times. That was considered a dial. You got to set a standard for yourself. So you can't just make a call, let it ring once and hang up. That's not a dial. So 3 rings, a dial. Now, in that 60 outbound dials, I would accumulate a minimum of 3.5 hours of talk time a day. So every single day, I'd get a minimum of 3.5 hours. A lot of times I was getting 4, 5, and 6 hours a day. If you were to log your talk time on how much talk time some of you are getting, I bet you're talking for maybe 20, 30 minutes a day. That is not going to get you the momentum it takes to get deals in this industry. Contact first, right? You got to make the contacts. That's the dials. You got to have quality conversations, which is your talk time. And then every day I was making 3 to 4 offers, 3 to 4 offers every single day. And then I did that consistently for 4 months. I had a proven track record of KPIs. I had a script that nobody else was using because I created it. When I got on the phone with these homeowners, I would immediately say, hey, this is Eric with ABC Home Buyers. I was reaching out about your property on 123 Main Street. It was referred to me by a referral company, and I wanted to reach out to see whether or not the property qualifies. So I was using immediately language the homeowner had never heard before, like qualify. What do you mean qualify? Everyone wants to buy everyone that calls me just wants to make me an offer. So I was immediately using different language and saying, see whether or not your property qualifies. So the point of the phone call today is to see whether or not we're a good fit. I'm going to ask you some questions about the house, which I know you've already answered 100 times. But in order for me to see whether or not we can work together, I have to ask the questions. Then what I want to do in the beginning of the call is I want to get them engaged. I got to take control of the call. So a lot of you right now, if you get honest with yourself, you'll get on the phone with somebody, bring them all the way through a pitch, make an offer on a house, and expect them to sign a contract. And you've never even had them write your name, number down, no contact information. And you're expecting a homeowner to sign a contract with you to sell the largest asset they probably have at their in their name, and you didn't even have the common courtesy to give them your name and number. So in the beginning, what I like to do is set very realistic expectations and get control of the call. So I'd say, hey, Matt, I know you get a ton of these phone calls, and I appreciate the time that you're going to give me today. What I want to do before I go in and start asking you questions about your house, I just want you to understand who you have on the phone. Grab a pen and paper for me real quick, and I'm going to have you jot my information down. So when we're doing virtual sales and we can't see anything, all we have is our voice, our tonality, and then we get to leverage some tactics that make it personable. So I have them get a piece of paper, write my first name down, my last name, my phone number. If you have a company name, the company name, your website, and it's right in front of them while I'm talking to them on the phone. I just put a name tag in front of that person. That way they don't have to wonder who they are talking to. What I like to do is objection prevention. I know what objections are going to come at the end. I need to think about it. I need a little bit more time. Let me talk to my spouse. All the objections you know are coming. So why wait to the very, very end to hear the objections? Do what most aren't willing to do, and that's get all the objections out of the way before they can ever come. I have a 5-step sales process. Step 1 is intro. Step 2 is fact find. Step 2 is the most important part of the entire conversation, because if you ask the right questions, you're going to get the answers that are ultimately going to help you close the deal. A lot of people think rapport is talking about like the weather or what kind of dogs you have or what's your favorite football team. Awesome surface level conversation pieces. But I can tell you, just because you have a golden doodle and they have a golden doodle, that ain't closing a deal. That is not a needle mover in a conversation. But if I ask questions along the way, and you got to be able to weave in questions where they don't understand, you're collecting data. Meaning, I'm going to collect everything I need for the end. So 1, we have intro. 2, you have fact find. 3, you have pitch. That's where you talk about the house. 4 is where you're going to make the offer. 5 is where you're going to close the deal down. If you do every step the right way and you take the time to try to buy their house over a telephone, mind you, you're asking another human being to sell you a property over a telephone. That does not happen in 5, 10, or 15 minutes. Yes, you will get deals in 10 minutes, the low-hanging fruit in the industry. But I'm going to close the deals most people can't close. So you have the 5 steps. You have intro, you have fact find, you have pitch, offer, close. If you do all 5 of those right, number 5, the close, is going to be the easiest part of the conversation, because now they are dealing with somebody that they like, trust, and want to do business with. You do not get to that stage with only talking about their house. You guys got to remember this. If somebody's going to sell a house, the only reason they're selling their house is to get access to cash. The cash ultimately is going to solve something for them. You don't just sell a house. So what you want to figure out is, why are they selling the house? The hardest part about our job is all the phone calls they got prior. I actually like the fact they get so many calls, because I use that in my pitch of, listen, the phone calls can end today. You don't ever have to take another one of these calls. Some of the things that you want to know as you're going through your pitch in fact find. I always want to know how old somebody is, how long they've been married, and if they're married. When's the last time they've talked about potentially selling the house? And I always use potentially. I don't go in and say, hey, I heard you want to sell. I heard you were potentially interested in selling your house. I slowly move into the conversation. I want to know if they're a landlord. I want to know how much they're getting for rent. There's so many things that I want to know. Do they have kids? And here's the reason why. If they're elderly, do they manage the rental property by themselves? All of this data that I collect, and remember, you have to understand how to ask questions at the appropriate time. If you just list off a bunch of questions, they're going to feel like you're interrogating them. That's when they're going to shut down and stop answering your questions and say, just get to the house. And that's where my script really helps you understand how to go in, out, in, out. I like to go in, collect data, and get back to the house. I go in, collect data, get back to the house. Before I know it, I've gotten all the information I need to go dance at the end when I try to close them and they start saying, let me think about it. Well, dude, if you haven't collected all the data, all the answers to the questions you must ask, and somebody gets to the end and you make an offer and they're like, you know what? I got to think about this. Well, if you have not collected the data, the only thing that you have to say is, well, what do you need to think about? But in my scenario, let's say I've done everything properly and they say, I need to think about it. And I know this guy is, let's say 68 years old. And I say, I know how long he's been thinking about selling. It's a tenant occupied property. He's getting $600 a month for rent. And I've offered him $110,000. I'm going to give this one scenario and then I'm going to wrap this up. There's levels to trying to close deals. When somebody says, I need to think about it, and you haven't done your job right, all you can say is think about what. But if you close like a pro and you actually take this profession seriously, and someone says, I need to think about it, and I know he's 68 years old. He's been thinking about it for 3 months. He manages the property by himself. And he's getting $650 a month for rent. And I've offered him $110,000. I'm going to go in and I'm going to say, listen, John, I get it. I know you need to think about it, but let me explain something real quick. You and I have been on the phone for about 48 minutes and you haven't stayed on the phone with me, John, because you like the sound of my voice. The only reason you've stayed on this call is because you are interested in selling this home. Now, you said it, not me, John, but I just want to recap some of the conversation that we've had. You're 68 years old, managing a rental property. Now, John, I'm not saying you're old, but you ain't no spring chicken anymore, buddy. And I'll say it with a giggle. Every time I say it, I get a giggle back out of them. And I'll giggle. And I'll say, the last thing you need to do is worry about what time your phone's going to ring to go over to that property. You told me you and Mrs. Smith have been thinking about this for the last 3 months. You don't think about something for 3 months and not want it. More importantly, you're getting $600 a month for rent, $650 a month for rent. Now, at 68 years old, that is not a needle mover, John. That is not life-changing money to collect $650 a month. So right now, every single year, and I'm going to bust out a calculator, and this is what I want you to do, John. Grab that paper I had you write all my information down on. Go ahead and write 650 and circle that number. And then next to it, I want you to write 110. And I know you want more than that, but go ahead and just write that number down and circle that number as well. Because right now you're getting 650 a month. They've offered you 110. I know you don't want to take it, but I still want that number in front of you. Every year, $650 times 12 is $7,800. That's what you're getting gross a year. Now take out taxes and insurance. Let's just do $1,200. You're walking away every year with $6,600. They've offered you 110 grand. And again, not to keep bringing your age up, but you're 68 years old. So in order for 110,000, and if I were to divide that by $6,600, it's going to take you 16 years to get $110,000 based off your current situation right now. 16 years plus 68, you're going to be 84 years old before you see that kind of money. Now, I understand 110 is something you're not going to agree with, but I do want to ask you this one question. When's the last time you had access to $110,000 in your bank account? That type of a negotiation is way better than when someone says, let me think about it. And all you have to say is think about what? Knowing I'm going to go and try and get them more money because my first offer, I start with $40,000 in it. So I still have wiggle room to come up on my offer. This is an industry of action. The production you put in is the results you're going to get. If you haven't gotten a deal, well, you haven't earned your deal yet because you haven't made enough dials, you haven't gotten enough talk time, and you haven't made enough offers. If you're scared to pick the phone up, pick the phone up. It's an absolute must. So if nobody has told you today that they believe in you, I believe in you. Let me be that voice in the back of your head. No matter how much doubt, no matter how much fear that you have going on with you right now or your situation, I believe that every single person on this call can live a life beyond their wildest dreams. But it all starts, the biggest sale you're ever going to make, and you got to close this thing. The biggest sale you're ever going to make in your life is you need to go in your bathroom or in your bedroom, look in the mirror and close yourself that you have everything it takes to get whatever you want out of life. Because until you close that deal right there with yourself, the doubt and the fear is going to take over.
Thanks for listening to the DealMachine Real Estate Investing Podcast. Please leave us a review and follow along wherever you're listening to your podcast.